The day's developments in the United Kingdom centre on comments from Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who confirmed that discussions on Ukraine in Geneva have produced what he described as measurable progress, while making clear that significant work remains ahead. Speaking to journalists during a visit to a school in Peterborough, Starmer outlined the next steps his government and allied partners intend to take as part of ongoing diplomatic efforts aimed at securing what he called a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. During his remarks, Starmer explained that the United Kingdom will host a virtual meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. The call is scheduled for Tuesday and is expected to bring together governments that have committed political, military or financial support to Ukraine as the war continues and diplomatic negotiations intensify. The Prime Minister said the meeting would focus on assessing recent developments from the Geneva discussions and determining how to build on them in the days ahead. He described the Geneva talks as constructive, noting that partners involved in those discussions have conveyed cautious optimism about the potential for incremental steps forward. Starmer emphasised that while initial progress is evident, more detailed work is required to move from diplomatic exchanges to concrete pathways that could support broader stability. During the soundbite released by the International Pool and AFP, Starmer stated, "I am now planning that we will meet virtually tomorrow, so we will host a Coalition of the Willing call to further discuss the progress that is being made and I hope can be made towards the thing that matters above all else, which is a just and lasting peace," which matters for Ukraine, but it also matters for all of us because the conflict in Ukraine has had a direct impact here in the United Kingdom. So progress, yes, more work to do, but we've all got our sleeves rolled up, ready to put in those hard yards, hopefully to get to the right outcome. His comments underline the position that the United Kingdom continues to hold among its NATO partners and other allied governments engaged in supporting Ukraine. Starmer referenced the domestic impact of the war, noting that disruptions caused by the conflict have affected energy prices, economic stability and supply chains in the United Kingdom. This point has often been raised by British officials when explaining continued UK engagement in the conflict and diplomatic process. The planned call with the Coalition of the Willing is expected to gather senior officials from multiple countries, although Starmer did not specify which governments would participate. The coalition generally includes states that have provided direct military aid, humanitarian support and security assistance to Ukraine. Its previous meetings have focused on coordinating logistics, reinforcing sanctions, maintaining supply routes and organising multilateral support packages for Kyiv. Starmer's remarks follow several days of intensified diplomatic activity surrounding the Geneva discussions, which aimed at identifying openings for renewed negotiations on a long-term settlement to the conflict. While the talks have not produced any formal breakthrough, officials involved have suggested that parties are attempting to narrow differences on several key issues. These include security guarantees, humanitarian access, the conditions necessary for broader ceasefire parameters and the return of territory occupied since the beginning of the war. In his comments, the Prime Minister did not elaborate on the specifics of the Geneva talks, nor did he outline which aspects registered the progress he referenced. Instead, he kept the focus on the overall need to remain engaged and on the shared responsibility held by allied partners. His reference to a just and lasting peace reflects the long-standing UK position that any settlement must uphold Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Throughout his remarks, Starmer emphasised readiness among coalition partners to continue their coordination. His use of the phrase "we've all got our sleeves rolled up" signalled that the process ahead will be demanding and will require sustained diplomatic effort across multiple channels. The Prime Minister linked these efforts to broader European and international security considerations, indicating that the consequences of the conflict extend beyond Ukrainian territory. The war in Ukraine has entered a phase characterised by both continued military confrontation on the ground and intensifying diplomatic exploration among governments seeking an end to the conflict. The United Kingdom has been a central contributor to Ukraine's defence since the early stages of the invasion, providing training, equipment and financial assistance. Starmer's remarks reaffirm the UK's commitment to maintaining this support while working in parallel toward negotiated outcomes. The Prime Minister also highlighted that the United Kingdom has been experiencing direct effects of the conflict, particularly in relation to economic pressures. These comments reflect ongoing discussions in Britain about energy security, inflation and regional stability, all of which have been shaped by Russia's invasion. By drawing attention to these factors, Starmer linked the diplomatic effort to domestic priorities, signalling that resolving the conflict has implications for the wider public. The school visit in Peterborough provided the backdrop for the Prime Minister's statement, although his remarks focused entirely on foreign policy developments and the ongoing international response to the war. Journalists present questioned him on the nature of the Geneva talks and the next diplomatic steps, prompting the detailed response captured in the soundbite. Starmer did not provide information about whether new proposals or frameworks would be presented during the Coalition of the Willing call. He instead centred his message on evaluating progress and determining additional work required from all participating partners. His emphasis on reviewing ongoing developments suggests that the meeting will serve as a coordinating session rather than one involving major new announcements. The coalition has played a significant role in synchronising policy approaches among allied governments, particularly on sanctions and military support. Starmer's announcement indicates that the United Kingdom continues to view this coordination mechanism as vital for maintaining unity in the international approach to Ukraine. In previous statements, British officials have highlighted the importance of aligned strategy, especially as conditions on the ground shift and diplomatic channels evolve. Officials from participating countries are expected to take part virtually, consistent with recent coalition meetings that have been conducted in hybrid formats. The focus on virtual coordination reflects both logistical considerations and the need for rapid information sharing among governments involved in the support effort. Starmer did not address whether the call would include discussions about the next phases of military support for Ukraine or adjustments to existing aid commitments. However, the timing of the call coming immediately after the Geneva talks suggests that participants will analyse the implications of those discussions and explore the extent to which allied governments can collectively support the diplomatic process. In his remarks, the Prime Minister emphasised that achieving a durable peace must remain the primary objective. The phrase, "the thing that matters above all else," underscored his view that the ongoing diplomatic work is essential not only for Ukraine but for broader regional and international stability. He linked that outcome directly to the well-being of the United Kingdom, pointing to the interconnected nature of global security, economic trends and geopolitical developments. The Prime Minister's reference to the conflict's direct impact on the United Kingdom signals a continued effort by the government to explain the relevance of international engagement to domestic audiences. Rising living costs, energy supply concerns and broader economic pressures have been recurring topics of public debate, and officials have frequently cited the war as a contributing factor to these challenges. Starmer's comments also come at a moment when international actors are assessing whether conditions exist for meaningful diplomatic progress. Negotiations in Geneva have involved multiple parties attempting to move the process toward more structured talks, but officials have consistently noted that major obstacles remain. Starmer's phrase, "progress, yes, more work to do," reflects the emerging assessment that while there is some movement, a comprehensive agreement remains distant. The United Kingdom's approach has remained focused on supporting Ukraine's defensive capability while participating in diplomatic efforts aimed at identifying openings for negotiation. Starmer has expressed similar positions in previous statements, emphasising that both military and diplomatic tracks are necessary to achieve long-term stability. His remarks in Peterborough align with that broader policy stance. By focusing on the next Coalition of the Willing call, the Prime Minister placed emphasis on collective decision-making and coordination, which he described as essential for pursuing what he called the right outcome. The soundbite released through the international pool and AFP forms the basis of the day's public statement from the Prime Minister on the Ukraine situation. The video material included only the remarks and did not feature additional questions or elaboration beyond the prepared statement. Starmer's comments conclude with a clear directive that partners remain committed to the process, that they continue to work toward a comprehensive peace framework, and that additional effort is required to translate diplomatic discussions into practical progress. His message underscores that while the Geneva talks are a starting point, a coordinated international response will be necessary to sustain momentum. As preparations continue for the virtual meeting, the United Kingdom and its partners are expected to review the situation in Ukraine, assess their support mechanisms, and consider how the diplomatic track may be advanced. Starmer's public statements make clear that the government views this coordination as essential in the weeks ahead. The situation remains active, with diplomatic channels open and allied governments evaluating how best to contribute to efforts aimed at securing long-term stability in Ukraine. The planned call of the Coalition of the Willing represents the next step in this process, following the Geneva discussions and the Prime Minister's assessment of the progress achieved so far. The Prime Minister's position reflects the current phase of international engagement, defined by continued military realities on the ground and renewed diplomatic initiatives. His comments indicate a recognition that both elements must be managed in parallel, with clear communication between partners and an emphasis on shared objectives. The United Kingdom's role will continue to involve coordination with allied governments, analysis of diplomatic developments, and support for efforts designed to reduce tensions and establish conditions for a sustainable peace. Starmer's remarks today reaffirm that commitment and outline the immediate next steps in that process. The situation now moves to the upcoming virtual meeting, where coalition members will assess developments and determine how to advance the diplomatic effort. For now, the Prime Minister's message emphasises measured progress, collective effort, and the need for continued coordination among all partners involved. The United Kingdom remains engaged in both the support of Ukraine and the diplomatic work aimed at resolving the conflict. The Prime Minister's comments today summarise that position clearly. Progress has been made, but the work ahead remains significant and requires sustained commitment from all participants in the process. The situation continues to develop, and the coming meeting of the Coalition of the Willing will form the next focal point for coordinated international efforts to support Ukraine and pursue a just and lasting peace.